Welcome to Repair University World Fair Edition.
It's very long.
We are unsupervised officially.
They made the mistake last week. Jason did, and so did Mark Olson. And they left us, and they left us on Friday the 13th. And we had a new Jason here. We had Jason from Friday the 13th, and Mike Myers came by, and we couldn't put them on screen and stuff like that. So they kept in the background, and they were giving us advice on how to run the shows and stuff. So the lawsuits came in on Saturday morning. We served papers. So now they decided to do it again for 2 days now. Now we're all alone.
Yeah.
Thursday and Friday. We voted everybody off the island.
I did pick a non-controversial topic for us to talk about.
Oh yeah, this is completely non-controversial.
I should pull out of this drawer the letters that we got about hey.
It was funny when we had the meeting and you said to Jason and Mark and some of the other people, it's like, oh yeah, Thursday morning, Larry and I are going to do how to wash and mask off a car for priming. And then you switched it at the last second to PRIs, and they're like, oh my God, I can't get back in time.
Right.
I heard Jason was trying to get a flight back last night.
All right, so we are going to talk about post-repair inspections. Now, we call them PRIs if you see them online. There's a lot of shops that do them, that post them. There's a lot of people that do them that don't post them. We don't particularly, generally, post a whole lot of ours.
I post certain ones. I mean, I don't give away, what insurance company or law firm or, listen, I've had ones that were insurance against insurance. I do a lot, funny enough, with dealerships selling the car. And then it's more of a DV thing. Now, I don't do diminished value. I don't do evaluations and stuff like that. There's other people who do that. That's not my field of expertise or even interest. But I'll get a job where I have to come in and prove, was the car sold without a Carfax or a VIN check or any one of those other things that had no report, but was it repaired beforehand? Was it involved in an accident? And I have to go and do like a quality of repair assessment. So that's not even related to collision repair for that job. It was previous, and this is how we talk all the time, that whatever repair you do now, it could stay with the next owner, the next owner, the next owner, the next owner, and that's what I get involved with a lot.
And we are going to explain the difference between a PRI and a QRA,
right? What
those are and the differences, and why we don't talk about QRAs online, and why we only talk about PRIs online. So we're going to go through all of that. Now, I do want to let you know, this is not going to teach you everything you need to know about doing post-repair inspections or being prepared for court for them as well, because some of these will go to court. Larry was here about a month ago, and we shot what is shaken out to be about a 12-hour class on post-repair inspections where we go through all the legal, all the law. Erica contributed on making sure that was there, down to preparing court reports, even for state and federal court, which is completely different. Not going to cover that today. We don't have a whole lot of time.
I think we have 3 other videos out that were free on walking around the car and touching it and looking at things and bore scopes and this and that. And then we did one with Jake on Repair University. So that's enough of the basis of like what you need to look at. We wanted to go into a course where, okay, we've seen people have problems and issues. And I guess maybe this is probably one of the few sales pitch classes we're offering right now for class.
That one we did with Jake eventually. I'm going to go back and rename that because I didn't call out the shops in that one, and then I caught all kinds of hell for it.
Right.
And I still have a person in the industry running around causing some problems. So I think I may go back and start adding some names to that one.
No problem. But we should do. We should almost sit back and have a class at Repair University on reviewing some of our older shows and give an update.
Yeah, there's an update on that.
There's an update on that.
So let's dive into this. So again, I want to let you know that you're not going to be able to finish the show today and go, oh, I know everything I need to know about PRIs, but it will give you a basis of understanding to know to pursue them, not to pursue them, how you want to do that. Let's get a few things out of the way. First, this is not legal advice. Erica is not here. And if she was here, she would tell you that she's only licensed to practice law in the state of Ohio, even though she's an expert. But she would tell you that, don't take this unless you're in Ohio as a legal advice. This is for informational purposes only. We want to inform you on the process. We have different experiences. Larry works with an engineering firm, and I tend to do them because people just show up in my parking lot. So we're going to give you both perspectives on those. You need to review everything you hear today with your lawyer. You need to make sure that it fits your business model, your state laws, and that you're aware of what the requirements are within your state. Please check your state laws. If in doubt, you have any questions, you can't decide what to do, give us a call, drop us a line. We'll be happy to tell you where we think you need to go or who you need to talk to next. We are not lawyers. I spent a lot of time.
And I stayed at a Holiday Inn last night.
I spent a lot of time in claims litigation counsel for an insurer. and had a lot of time in court and prepping files for court, but I'm not a lawyer. I really wanted to be one. I just can't sit still that long to go to school for it. So
I think the biggest issue with that is what we bring here and what we're trying to say we're not lawyers. We've made the mistakes. You've made them with the insurance companies you were with. You won a lot, you lost some. You know, I've won on the working with insurance companies, working for lawyers, for dealerships, working for consumers. Even sometimes a shop bought a car that was bad. So there's mistakes, there's good, there's bad, and what we're trying to relate to is don't make the same mistakes we did years ago.
I feel like that, you know, that Kid Rock meme where it's like, you know, the meme's like, this is me going back into work to stir up trouble. I mean, there's a lot of times I walked into court like this going, I got a foolproof case, I'm about to kick your ass, and I walked out going, how did I lose that one? So, you know, we learn a lot.
Walk into court. I mean, I've walked into court and I've seen the other side, and we'll talk about it later. It's a federal court, and the report is incorrect, and the judge just throws out your entire expert case, and now you're standing there going, I don't have anyone.
I have nothing left.
I have nothing, and you got to settle because the judge decided, well, guess what? That guy isn't an expert.
Yeah, I don't like that guy. So we are not lawyers, but also you are not a lawyer. So I had some discussions that came up the other day. I had one guy tell me that on a completely different subject that, you know, ADAS systems weren't considered real safety and safety systems by the government yet, so he couldn't be held liable for not doing ADAS stuff right. And I was like, you need to go see a lawyer. So a lot of times we hear things. Sometimes we hear things from people in the industry that we think are reputable. And I'll tell you, always double check me. Double check everything I tell you. That's why we tell you to go see your lawyer. So I'm not a lawyer, you're not a lawyer. Do your research, do your fact checking, check everybody. You may, in some cases, in some states, need to be licensed to perform post-repair inspections. And some of that comes into play if you try to make yourself an adjuster. So if you start trying to negotiate a claim benefit, which means you call an insurance company back and say, hey, you guys owe more on this claim because your shop didn't fix it right, then now you're crossing over the lines, not being a vehicle person, you're trying to act as an adjuster and get more payment. That gets you love notes from your state Supreme Court.
Yeah, try to avoid being a shop, the designated representative, the PRI guy, the public adjuster, the right to appraisal adjuster. Don't be everything. You might have to hire 3-4 people, get them involved. So don't be everything at once.
Know your business, as I always like to say, know your role, and your DOI laws as well, so that you're in compliance. Most of the time, as a body shop, the DOI doesn't regulate us, but they get complaints through insurers, and then usually your DOI and your attorney general and all of them are somewhat sharing a building at the state capitol, and they eat lunch together, and they pass paperwork over and pass it through the AG's office and said, hey, this business is being a problem, or they pass it up to the Supreme Court and say, hey, we think this body shop's practicing law without a license. So you want to make sure that you are fully in line with everything. So here's what we're going to cover today. Right? Remember, this is a 12-hour full-on class. It is a 3-day event if we host it and actually walk you through it hand by hand on what to do. And we
keep your attention this long. That's why they're broken up in modules of like 6 to 12 minutes.
So we're not going to cover it all today. We will launch Larry's full PRI class somewhere in December. I am going to give my crew some time off after this 2 weeks before we go back to editing. All right, so what is a post-repair inspection? We will be covering that. I know I want to monitor questions, but I don't want to hear me twice, right?
Right.
All right, so what is a post-repair inspection? Qualifying the customer and the inspection. So we don't just do any car that comes into the parking lot. I don't. I know you don't either.
Sometimes you can't.
So we're going to talk about that. Managing the customer's expectations. If you don't, this goes way south, way fast, because believe me, when it's over, the other side of the fence calls your customer and tries to figure out a way that you didn't do something right. So we talked about it earlier in the last week, how on some of these claims, especially under RTA, we have insurance companies doing exams under oath on their policyholders because this feels, it just feels weird to them. It feels like fraud. I don't blame them for investigating. It doesn't bother me at all.
I do a lot of fraud investigation actually in the New York area with Lang Technical Services. I'm getting a lot of calls from shops who, you know, I know and stuff, and they're asking me the same thing. It's like, oh, well, the insurance company called up. It's this car. It's a total loss. Now all of a sudden they want to do an examination under oath, and they want to pull the information out of the black box. And I'm like, okay, what's the situation? Well, we had a car that the vehicle was driving down the road. They said they got hit by somebody and they hit into a wall. I said, well, the black box is not going to tell them anything because the car was moving. Insurance companies try to use the black box technology for parked and unoccupied. So
Do you want to do an exam under oath? I don't mind. I don't have anything to hide.
Do it,
I
but they're doing a lot of that now. It's crazy.
Well, some of it is that just it's not the same people at the insurance anymore, and they're not as exposed to this. So it's fine, but just know that you need to manage that customer's expectations. You need to talk about what the required forms are. You need to gather the evidence and the facts. It's not just necessarily about the car that presents to you. You've got some homework that you're going to do. What are some of the steps of the initial inspections? On the online additional course in December when it releases, you'll learn more legal terms and definitions. We have 4 pages of just legal terms and definitions that we're going to go over. Notifying which parties and when. We go into a little bit more detail on that. We don't pick up the phone as soon as the car comes in and goes, oh man, I got one of your cars down here and it's horrible.
Yeah.
Calling too early is a problem. What a joint inspection is and how to handle those and what the legal ramifications or obligations of joint inspections are. Formal inspection with full disassembly. I'm going to be honest with you, 99% of shops in the country, this is not what you would do. This is when you would hand it off to an expert, and formal inspection and full disassembly with destructive testing is something you don't want to do as a collision repairer. We would go over the spoliation and evidence rules. We talk about state and federal court and the differences, as well as the reports. We actually will prep reports for attorneys. And there are different ways to write reports depending on which court system you are in, and we cover those in details with examples of reports that we have written on other cases, which is probably why I got those little nice love notes from attorneys that said, don't do this course. I think they were thinking that we were going to show their stuff. We are.
Yes.
So, and I have ran that through my attorney. So,
oopsie.
Here we go. But we will not do that today. We will be doing that on the online course. And then we have a lot of case studies. So case studies from you that have gone and have settled, or have had to go to court to get an opinion.
Yeah, we give you, I think, 6 or 7 different case studies. You can watch them at your leisure on the program, but it's basically give you a couple of different scenarios and what happened, what went on, and the ultimate outcome and stuff, and some of the mistakes made by the other side, and try to avoid these things. You know,
Never
that's the whole
interrupt
idea.
your enemy when they're making a mistake.
No,
all right, so first let's get a few things out of the way. So there are some tools and equipment that you will need to get this done that are a little bit different necessarily than what you may or may not be doing during your estimating process. Larry, this is like, what, $50 worth of stuff?
No. It's a little bit more expensive. You need a helicopter, a Bentley. Oh, no, that's my wish list.
That's your Christmas list. I got it already, by the way, thanks. Yeah.
A helicopter would be very, very, very helpful in New York City or, I guess, Philadelphia or even Los Angeles, trying to drive around and look at cars and go to cars because it's just a nightmare in traffic. No, you're looking upwards of probably about $7,000 worth of equipment you're going to have to purchase or own to be involved in this. And the markers are very expensive, as you can see there. No, it's not the markers.
Let's talk a little bit about what's out here.
Well, the acclimator, which is here, and we're going to be using this a little bit later to show that. These range anywhere from $300 up to about 15,000, excuse me, 1,500, and then these probes will raise the price up a little bit more to about $3,000 total, because of the integrated ones will usually run 1,500, but they only go up to about 60 mils.
Right.
One of these for steel goes up to 500 mils. The other one goes up to 250 for aluminum. So that's to really see how much filler and stuff is there. So that raises the price. A rule is fairly cheap. I mean, this is free if you take an iCar class, which comes in handy for quick pictures.
I have a handful of them, and over
these are
the years,
good for quick take a look. But you would need a veneer or a caliper. Right. Gap gauge, which is that electronic one up at the top right-hand corner there. That's actually a gap gauge. They're about $800. Very, very accurate. The veneers can run about a really good one. You want something that's accurate, probably about $40. An iPad or a pad, an open pad. I like the iPad because I can also take pictures sometimes with it. Because remember, a DSLR camera is pretty big. An iPhone or an iPad is nice and thin. I can get in areas and hit the button that I can't get in there with. So I sometimes utilize that. A borescope.
And some of that's the difference between a QRA and a PRI.
Yes.
Right. At a certain level, as I begin to move more toward court, the equipment,
I mean, a lot of the stuff I have, almost everything on there a shop's going to have. You could have the lower grade, 60 mil one, 60 mil reader if you want, and the borescope. I mean, most shops have a borescope now. You should have it anyway to check airbags and
I may have to have another one of those that'll do plastic. I mean,
I have another one too. I have the Delfesco one also, and we'll talk after about using that and what people make a mistake with. And then that little black, funny-looking thing there next to the camera is actually a Microscope. It's a portable microscope. That there's about $1,800, and it's fantastic. It's basically a microscope that I can bring and put to my computer, and it takes photos.
Right.
So sometimes I'll utilize that out in the field with a laptop computer and use my Microscope and just take a really, like if I need to get a paint
transfer.
Like a paint scratch or a paint break for some reason, or a transfer of material, yellow, blue, green, whatever. I can get down there with that. I can take a picture of a crack in a windshield to see what actually caused it. Is it from the inside, from the outside? So it's really, really helpful. A shop probably wouldn't need something like that, but
that's that difference between PRI and QRA,
yes.
right? When the expert's called in, or if I know I'm starting to head toward federal court. There are some other equipment that you're going to need. So, there are people that do this a little bit for a living. We'll talk about that later. But you are going to need, at the level, without calling in an expert, you're going to need access to a good three-dimensional measuring system that can print off reports.
And you're going to need to know how to use it. Like I'll rent shop equipment from certain shops that I've worked with before. Hey, listen, I'll pay you X amount of dollars. Let me use your equipment for these hours on this day, and they're there. There's sometimes I'll actually call the equipment supplier representative in to be there with me, so that we ensure, or there's been times where we have a joint inspection and we'll do it at like one of their facilities, and we'll have 3 or 4 lawyers, 3 or 4 experts, and they'll measure the car in front of us.
Yeah, I love it when people tell us, well, you're faking the machine. Okay, where do you want me to bring it, right? So you need access to three-dimensional measuring system. I'm going to give you a few cues here. Not everybody that owns one knows how to use it. Not everybody that owns one has one that's actually in real working order. So,
or updated sometimes, the computerized ones that have to get updated.
I love distributors. They're fantastic people, but sometimes their field trainers aren't as good as they think they are, and I go back in shops that thought they were trained on stuff really aren't trained. So if you strongly encourage that you make a phone call to someone who is an expert in that equipment and verify that you are using it correctly. You may need to get additional training yourself. If you are going to make an arrangement or a relationship with somebody that gives you access to this 3D measuring, you know how to use it, and you might want to reach out to a third party to validate them. Because the last thing you want to do, and it happens all the time, Larry, is for you to send me a report telling me that you've proven something's wrong with a car, and it takes me about 2 minutes to prove that you didn't measure the car right.
Yeah. Each printout from each three-dimensional system has telltale signs different, and it's really funny. I mean, and I know people on Facebook now live with this. Anybody who's out there, please just say Larry's telling you the truth when you've called me and you've been there with your rep, and I try and explain, well, this is and who showed you this, and the guys in the background going, well, I showed him that. I said, well, you're incorrect. Here's what you're supposed to do. It's like, oh yeah, I made that mistake. Oh, I forgot that. And it's like, oh, wait a second, hang on. Okay, let's remeasure this. And they're like, oh, okay, so that really wasn't damaged like that. Yeah, no, that wasn't off 175 millimeters. I'm sorry, that was a little incorrect. We struck something the wrong way, and we didn't have this or have that. And people make this mistakes, and it's about each system has its own way of setting itself up. Like the select guy said yesterday, it's striking a center line, it's getting that. If you don't do that right, all your other measurements are going to be off, and all I got to do is look at your center line setup, and I go, there's a problem.
If we're on your team, we're going to tell you how you did it wrong. We're going to get it right. If you're not on our team and we're on the other side of the fence,
we're going to wait for court to bring that up.
We're going to hold that back, right? But there's a lot of times you have technicians that and you're the front shop guy, the owner. You assume that it's being done right, and then shops start taking shortcuts, and eventually they're using the equipment wrong. So, and then we are a legacy learning environment industry. So we may have one guy that got trained on the equipment when we bought it, and throughout the years, as new technicians have come in, we've done legacy training, not refresh training.
Or they update the equipment and they give you a new computer system. It's basically the same, and they don't know all the icons.
Yeah.
I've been to classes where one of the techs is like, I've been working on this for years ago. Oh, that's what that's for. It's like, oh, God, come
Larry,
on, guys.
let's be honest. I got to have a tech that figures out, well, I know because this used to happen to me in the insurance industry, right? I'd bring you up to corporate, I'd sit you down, I'd put you through claim school and policy school and law, and I'd teach you the right way to handle it. You go back to your office, and some manager would go, Yeah, that's only the way they do it at corporate. Let me show you how we really do it.
Yeah.
So a lot, when it's time to train the new guy, we don't bring the distributor back in. We teach him, and we start passing down our old bad habits.
There's never enough time.
Yeah,
There's never enough
it
time
just
to bring the
happens.
guy in and give him a couple hours in the shop.
You're going to
gotta
need
do
an
it.
approved OE scan tool, and I'm going to drive this home for you, because the last thing you want to do is try to tell me that, let's say I'm representing the insurance's DRP shop, or whoever you're after. The last thing you want to do is tell me that the shop didn't follow OE procedures, didn't fix the car right, and you hand me an aftermarket scan report. I'm going to have fun with that one too. And then, as we proved earlier, we had Jake in the week, we had AirPro and Subaru yesterday. There is so much on these cars these days that the tools just don't get. So you're just going to make sure you have access to that.
We get into some of these OEM stuff, and like, let's say the shop used some aftermarket scan tool, said the car was okay, and then we have key cycles on the car. Some vehicles actually have timers on the car.
Yeah.
So when you get to the OEMs, and a lot of times we'll have the car move to a dealership, and it'll be a joint scanning. They'll scan in front of us, but I make sure I call up the shop beforehand, the dealership, and I know that they're doing it, and they know how to read it and go over everything.
Right.
And then obviously in alignment, you might have to do
You may
a wheel alignment check.
Yeah.
Which is important, because a wheel alignment check will tell you a lot of stuff.
And some of like I said, some of this doesn't mean if you're a smaller shop and you think you want to do some PRIs to help customers, and you say, well, Kristen, I don't have all this. I'm not saying you can have all of it in your shop. You got to have access to it. But just like your sublet vendors, whether it's your glass guy or whatever, you better know that who you're subletting out to knows what they're doing, and you can rely and trust them to give you the right information, because if you go to war with bad data, it's not going to.
Well, sometimes like it with glass, like you just said with glass, if you don't buy the factory, if the factory requires their adhesive, you don't use it. Oh, I use the sublet guy. All right. What's going to happen is some lawyer, depending on the size of the case, is going to subpoena his paperwork. All right. And he's going to bring his paperwork, and it's like, okay, where's the OEM repair bill that says you bought this adhesive? Well, I didn't, and now it becomes a problem.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's why I got the letters that said don't do this class. They didn't want me to say how I'm defending them. That may be right.
Correct.
I always tell
that's
people
the actual PRI class.
That's how you and I became friends, was opposite sides of the table. So we can disagree and then walk out and go have a drink together. All right, so what is a post-repair inspection? We're going to talk about the what. Definitely the vehicle has been repaired. So
that's why it's called a post-repair inspection, not a never been in an accident inspection.
Yeah.
Then you go into a dealership, which is basically, we have to do that sometimes to get exemplar information off a car.
Right.
The reason is this dent here on from the factory. Let me go look at 4 other brand new ones.
The reason it's here is sometimes I get calls from people that are wanting, let's say that they lost the job, the car got pulled them or whatever, and it's down the road at another shop, and they're like, can you just go over there and inspect it now? No, I need to wait for them to repair it. Patience. Patience, Padawan. When
if I go now, it's called consulting. If I do it afterwards, it's a post-repair inspection. So you want me to pay? You want to pay me to teach them how to fix the car? So they took money away from you.
Right.
Okay.
All right. There are 2 types in which we talked about. We are only going to cover post-repair inspection today. There is what's called the expert, which is the quality repair assessment, or the QRA. And that is where we get very scientific. So we've done well-destructive testing. We've done panel testing for materials. We know what material was and wasn't used. Things get sent off the labs,
the basis difference is PRI is usually something you can handle yourself with an insurance company, maybe sometimes stupidly that I am, because people have a lot of tendency to talk about me and their assumptions. But people on there, you can say it now. Please post it on there. How many times have I helped you for free over the phone, talk myself out of it? Oh, I want to hire you to do this. I talk myself out of a right to appraisal or a post-repair inspection. I said, no, do this, this, and this. And it works.
Hey, that's part about qualifying the customer.
Well, yeah, exactly. But a QRA is something that's probably going to go to court, and you have to prove why. Like any shop will tell you that's welded on the wrong way. But now you need somebody to come in and prove why it's welded on the wrong way. And that's probably the real difference between PRI and QRA. PRI can be a lot of opinions, and you can argue and negotiate. QRA becomes the point where it's got to go to court, and you got to be right, and you have to be able to prove it.
Right, and
that's
I need
a big
an engineer
difference.
at that point. That's where
usually an engineer, somebody that's been qualified as an expert in the industry or in courts, and been peer reviewed. That's usually the important part.
So these can be performed on your own vehicle. So, most 99% of what we're doing is because a customer's been unhappy about a paint chip, and then it just, it's like a 9-layer onion at that point. It just goes.
If you PRI'd yourself, like our quality repair, our quality check class that we did, if you did that, which is basically a PRI through the repair process,
Yeah.
Or not even a post, a current, let's call it a current repair inspection. Current repair inspection, as you went through, you probably would never have an issue with a PRI.
Yeah, you'd never see us.
So you're basically doing auditing on yourself as you go from each department, and that'll prevent the PRI.
Yeah.
That's how we came up with that QC class.
Yeah, you can definitely even think about doing this on some vehicles that have already delivered. So if you're kind of new to the thinking about changing your quality and OE procedures and whatever, and you want to go back and find cars you fixed and do some PRIs on your own stuff and learn some lessons, they definitely can be done on yourself. Customers can bring vehicles to you. These come two ways, right? Either they pull up in your driveway and say, I'm unhappy. I've never had a customer pull up my driveway and say, I don't think they put my quarter panel on right, or I don't think my frame is fixed perfect. Usually they're pulling in and saying, hey, my paint doesn't match.
The paint doesn't match, the bumper isn't lined up, the door doesn't open and close correctly. Something stupid.
Something little.
Once in a blue moon, like 10% of the time, it's, well, look, I let go of the steering wheel and the car pulls left or right. I brought it back 2 or 3 times.
Then that's the important point. I've never had one of these that show up, and they do, like during the course of the World Fair of the last week and a half, 2 people have pulled in to wanted to look at their car, and we don't have the time right now.
Right.
I have the time next week, by the way, they're coming back. But they come in with some sort of complaint, but they've already tried to solve that complaint with the shop that fixed it multiple times. So in the online class, you will see our experience in Hawaii, where it went to 2 different shops through the Insurer's DRP program. Each of those shops touched it 5 times.
Well, one shop was 5, one shop was 4.
Okay, still didn't take care of the customer's complaint.
And then got to the point, like everything else, and that's what causes it. You're crazy, get out of here, you know what you're talking about.
We can't make this lady happy.
We're not making you happy, get lost. And then they get their DRP insurance company that they're involved with to say the same thing. You know what, we've done everything, we've exhausted it. It's not a brand new car. They don't work in a perfect world. These are the excuses.
I was super excited. I mean, and literally this lady from Hawaii finds Larry online, and suddenly we're getting an all expense paid trip to an island to re-inspect a car, and we're like, yeah.
And while I'm there, it's like, hey, the Auto Body Association, listen, someone's paying us, some crazy person's paying us to come all the way out there. First class, by the way. You know, you want to run a class while we're out there? Yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah. Okay, we can discount the plane flight.
Yeah, I want to say that was a great flight. I got little Mai Tais the whole way I was flying. It was really awesome. All right, we're going to talk about what your role is in it and what your role isn't. Right? You're not Superman. You're not, you know, Batman. It's not your job to save everybody.
You're not a lawyer, and be very careful how you say certain things.
Right. I do want to caution you, this is not a revenue stream. I get contacted a lot by shops going, hey, I think I'm going to add PRI and make it a revenue stream. And don't get me wrong, there is some money that can be made, but if you are an active and open body shop and that's what you do is fix cars, this doesn't really help your revenue stream. In some ways it may constrain you. It doesn't mean I don't want you to do them, because I think they're fantastic to have for court. So, you know, Mark Gabbard uses them in court all the time.
Yep.
We had a recent case out of Missouri, and had I had some PRIs, probably that shop would not have had a good day operating as a witness for the insurer.
Mike Anderson and Larry Montanez Ohio case?
Yeah. So there's some great things to have there, but just understand that this isn't something that you're going to turn into a big, huge revenue stream. The more that you try to make it a revenue stream, the more it tends to make people, including lawyers and judges, et cetera, believe that you're intentionally doing this, that this isn't just something that the consumers have to
you're going to cause the chompery.
Right.
You know, the funny thing is you got to look at PRIs in your shop as being ceramic coating, window tinting, you know, nitrogen tires.
Bed liners. We did bed liners yesterday. Yeah.
You know, it's just another add-on service that I can add to it. It's not a big revenue stream. It's another screwdriver in my toolbox, not the whole toolbox.
For me, I mean, I have a fee schedule, but I don't charge the customer unless I got to go to court. And at that point, there's attorney's fees, and the attorney starts paying me. But
see, I won't do customers alone. They need to be attached to a shop. You know, I'll say, listen, I'd love to take the job, but I think you need a shop first. I'll save you money. I'm way too expensive. Go to a shop, let them look at it. Somebody you trust, blah, 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 blah. That's once I find out what the situation is. We'll talk about qualifying a customer. It's no different than consulting. Someone calls me and says, oh, I have this consultant in here, and I want to bring you in. It's like, no, I won't do it, because you're working with that person, that guy or that girl. I don't work with 2 consultants at once. You know, you can't have a consumer sometimes get involved. You need to have something attached to it. And I don't want to charge the customer money.
Right.
You know, it's just easy to have a shop look at it. They might be able to solve it.
The other way these cars show up is that they've come into your shop for new damage, and in the course of you inspecting it, you realize there was a prior bad repair.
That's popular too now.
We have to stop and go, whoa, I can't touch this car, and do something different. So Remember, these start because repairs were attempted and they failed. 99% of them is because the owner found issues and went back to the shop trying to get it resolved, but they don't make the shop happy. So I always tell people, when a customer comes back with a complaint, even if you think it's not related, like you fixed the rear and they said their headlights don't work, it could be related. Well, today with cars, I don't ever say anything's not related anymore. But you always need to pull that car in and take it really seriously, because that customer, if they don't get the resolution they want, or you can't actively make them happy with their problem, they may seek a second opinion. So they may bring the car to me and say they fixed the rear and the headlights don't work. What do you think I'm going to do? You think I'm going to tell them, ma'am, I'm sorry, fixing the car in the rear isn't going to affect your headlights. I'm going to be, let's go take a look at the car, right? So someone's going to explore that, take every complaint seriously. And sometimes that means, yes, I take the car, I put the customer in a one-day rental so that I have enough time to really go over that car, because I don't want a problem, and I want to make them know that I'm taking your complaint, I'm taking your problem very seriously, and until I can resolve it, I'm going to put you in a rental. We would be out of business in this area. I always tell them, when the insurer stopped by to visit with me, I would go, I would not exist at all if shops would just do this. Literally, you could get rid of me in a heartbeat.
Right.
And there are real concerns. We told the story in our our quality and QC class.
QC class.
About,
yeah.
I had a customer, when I was a DRP manager, I had a customer call me because she went to pick up her car. The shop told her it was ready, and it literally didn't have a driver's seat in it. There was a bucket there. And they were trying to get her to take the car. No, just take us a few minutes to pop the seat in. And she at that point, she had no confidence. I didn't blame her. I was like, no, you're going to keep her in the rental, and we're going to keep the car for 24 hours.
She had the high-end model with the
Home Depot bucket.
Home Depot bucket.
Home Depot bucket. It's the new Home Depot edition Harley Davidson truck, or the F-150 truck or whatever. So the insurer may or may not have been informed at this point. Generally, when the customer comes in, I'm not ready for them to call the insurer yet. I'm not ready for them to call the shop yet. There's some things I want done. We'll talk about that. A lot of times the shop has said, no more. We can't make you happy, ma'am. You're just an unreasonable customer.
Yeah.
I used to get these calls all the time as a DRP manager. You guys would call me if you were a DRP shop, and you would want to get to me before you thought the customer was going to get to me, and tell me your side of the story, to try to tell me that my policyholder, who pays me money on a monthly basis, is unreasonable and can't be made happy. My job is to take care of the policyholder. It was not to take care of you. And at that point, I'm thinking, who are you working for, right? You're supposed to be taking care of Miss Smith. That's why I sent Miss Smith to you to get the repair. But it always amazed me how many shops would call me to try to tell me my customer doesn't know what they're talking about, and I should believe their story first. Never, ever give up on a customer and making them happy unless you want them to come see one of us or somebody else in the country that does what we do. The customer at this point, by the time they're in our driveway, is super mad.
Yeah.
They're super mad. They're super frustrated. And it is amplified if we find problems. So if I give that car a cursory look and have to come back out and say, Ms. Smith, I need to let you know I don't think your car's safe to drive, and here's why, her frustration and her anger amplifies even greater.
I've had maybe 5% of the time I've had it where I had to agree with the shop. Yeah, you're a pain in the ass customer. You're a little nuts. There's nothing wrong with this repair. What are you talking about?
It's so rare.
It is. It's 5% of the time. You know.
And I've had, I don't even know. I can't even think of a story where there hasn't been something wrong. To some of the degree that the customer presents it, sure. But at that point, when the customer is so frustrated that I've had to get involved, I don't blame them for blowing anything out of proportion. Yeah. Right? We deserve it at that point. If we'd have handled it right in the first place, it wouldn't have got to here. So if it's going to cost you rental days or whatever, I'm okay with that. We're good there. And you want to remember that you're just there to help. You're not there to handle it, and you're not there to be Superman or the Crusader or whatever. You are just there to help. That's your role. You're just like, hey, I'm here as an expert and here to help, but I can't do this for you because this isn't our fight, and we're not their legal representative or any of that thing. So we want you to remember that that's your role. All right, so there is the two types. Post-repair inspections are done by collision repair facilities. Generally, there is no written report given. You may write an estimate, you may not. I don't do them unless there is some specific reason, and those are very limited. You may have to write a brief overview, and we call an overview report maybe an email.
An email, just a couple of bullet points of what you found. Nothing too, in depth. Just basically, quarter panel welded on incorrectly, multiple, bunch of welds that were not, fused properly.
Yeah.
Real
Vehicle
short.
may be re-repairable. It may not. It may be an obvious total loss. I will tell you, if the vehicle's re-repairable, I ain't doing it. And I recommend you don't do it either.
There's certain cases, like if someone put 15, 18 hours on a quarter panel and they did a plastic jamboree on it and it really needs to be changed and they didn't do anything else, all right, you know what, you cut the quarter off, put a quarter on, that's okay. Once parts are welded on the vehicle, now you become an issue where the inner parts, if they're welded incorrectly, you're going to have an issue. Or if the weld never fused on properly or they glued the panel on, you might be able to still fix it.
You already have a customer that's upset that feels like they need a re-repair. I just want to caution you to think about taking that in. If we go back to the Hawaii case, the second shop involved is probably the one paying the worst right now for this, because they tried to fix what another shop had done at the direction of an insurer. So you always, I don't think I've had anybody tell me a story of fixing somebody else's work that went well.
Yeah,
right?
no.
So
especially when it was, hey, look, they screwed up. We need you to help us. Would help them cover this up and do this and do that, and it's just more bad work on top of bad work.
In general, in a post-repair inspection, there's not a whole lot of real disagreement, right? Both shop, you and the other shop, go, yeah, you're right, that was bad. We didn't do the right thing or whatever. They may not like that you got caught or that you're calling them or whatever, but there in general is no real disagreement, and we don't need a lawyer at this point. Where the customer's just trying to get settled. All right, a quality repair assessment, so a QRA. You need a third-party expert.
Generally, yes.
An engineer-directed expert. You got to get somebody involved. A report will be required, and these reports must meet court standards. So that means it's going to get submitted in evidence, and you're going to get deposed on it at that point. Destructive testing will be required. So like Larry said, it's one thing for me to go out and from 60 feet away, I can tell those are bad welds. I can visually inspect the welds and go, those are horrible. You put the quarter panel on wrong. But that's not admissible in court. So my opinion from 30 feet away that those are bad welds, even though I know I'm right, isn't court approved. I now need to do destructive testing.
And when you destructively test it, sometimes you need to prove at what pressure it broke apart at, and or just follow the manufacturer's procedures for even doing your own weld testing, which is basically break it apart and then measure the nugget hole. Yep. So if you show me a spot weld that you ripped apart and the holes are kind of like what would look like small to people versus like some bigger rip hole welds that you might show, well, guess what? The manufacturer says it's 5 times the metal thickness. And I measured mine. And the piece of metal is 0.9 millimeters thick and the hole is 5.8, millimeters. That's 5 times the metal thickness plus some. So technically, that weld passes. And then you have no way of proving it because you didn't measure it. And that's where this issue comes in.
And destructive testing is a big deal. So if we go back to the Ohio case, I get involved in a certain level. Mike Anderson gets involved in a certain level. And Ohio is a great case where now we needed to do the destructive testing to repair it. Mike calls you in. You work on the behalf of the attorney. You did the destructive testing.
Mike told the attorney, this is beyond my realm. I suggest you call this guy. They'll come in and they'll do whatever else needs to be done. So Mike had to testify on what he did, and then I had to come in and testify on what I did.
But I know the same thing. When I get to this point where I have to do destructive testing, that's not something me or Jason are going to do. We need you. You are a federally recognized court expert, and that's what you come in and do for us. Generally, these vehicles are not repairable.
Yeah, these are really bad.
These are also going to sit for a couple years probably, and you're going to have to store them.
It could be, it could be.
There's a disagreement. In other words, your side, not you, but your customer's attorney has reached an impasse with the original shop that fixed the vehicle or the insurance company representing.
And they're forcing a court case.
Right. And a lawyer is required. Remember, what you do through a lawyer is not practicing law without a license. What you do with a consumer is practicing law without a license sometimes.
If the lawyer tells you to do it and he, orders you to do so because you're working with him, then great, you can do it. But if he tells you don't touch it, don't do this, don't do that, well, then you have to take care of it.
And I can give a lawyer my opinion. So if the lawyer who represents the customer calls me and goes, Kristen, what do you think about this and what legally happens and what's your case history with these? that's advice, or not really advice. I'm just telling a lawyer my opinion. When I start having those conversations with customers, then I'm giving legal advice to a customer.
Yeah, you can pretend to be a lawyer with a lawyer because you're trying to give them, like if I was able to fight this case, I would say that, hey, you know what, that's great, I can use some of that, and they'll know how to present it in a court, either him or her, but you can't tell that to a customer and give them legal advice.
Right. And so sometimes I make the attorney get on the email exchange with me so I can have my
You can even have an attorney tell you something. Like an attorney can't answer a question, and I go back around and say, hey, look, the lawyer said you can do this as this. Guess what? I'm practicing law without a license now.
Ms. Smith, I need you to email me back and copy your attorney on it, and then I will answer your question. So these are most likely going to go to court. All right, so what is your role? So if you're a collision repairer or you're a third-party independent adjuster or whatever, and you're thinking of getting into this, what is your role? Your role is to gather all the information. So you've got some fact-finding missions to do before I even go look at the car. I got some stuff to do. You are going to be visual and a little technical. So you're going to do the research to support your opinion, but please remember it's an opinion at that point. Even though I know you got the OE back information, it's cool, but it's still an opinion. You need to understand all the options on the table to make sure that you're doing what you need to do and you're not putting the customer in an adverse position unnecessarily, right? You need to seek some advice from experts when you need the advice from experts. That doesn't mean call an expert every time, but when you need it, absolutely reach out and develop your expert network.
A lot of times I don't mind answering free questions or talking myself out of a job because I actually educate myself with your case. So I learn a little bit more about something, I figure it out, and it's a part of that whole let me figure out if I can do this and not have to get involved, and then they call me back and they tell me what happened. You learn some stuff that way. So it goes into my book of information in my head to help other people.
Doug Craig says hi.
Hey, Doug, what's up, Doug? Too bad you couldn't be here. Hopefully next year when the COVID's over.
He was supposed to be here this week.
I couldn't wait to do a show with him, but hopefully we get another one.
So I always encourage people to develop your pool of experts before you start doing whatever you think you're going to do. I don't want to be trying to find an expert after I'm two feet deep in the hole. I want to know who I'm going to lean on before I start digging. So make sure you develop that network. There's a lot of people out there that are really great resources. You can find a lot of people to lean on. Explain this all to the customer. Too often, I get involved, you do too, when the train has left the tracks and it's a huge mess, and now they're calling for advice, and I'm like, well, what does the customer know? Nothing. Because we take the car in and we get puffy and we start making calls to insurers and DRP managers and the other body shop, and we stir the pot and get everybody.
There's been 3 or 4 experts involved.
Yeah, it's like pop. You know, we hit the hornet's nest with a stick and then come running. What's that meme everybody posts online? Larry. Yeah. With all the hornets chasing us, but the customer has no idea what's going on, and now.
But that's no different than how they handle normal collision repair. And it goes sideways with the insurance company and supplements and stuff, and all of a sudden, well, I don't want to talk to the customer. You have to. I don't care if it's a PRI or a regular collision repair.
Very often, very early in this process, my conversation with the customer is, I'm going to tell you right now, to get the result you want, it will require court. And they're like, well, I don't want to do that. Okay, then let's not go any further.
If you think those are tough conversations, imagine being a cancer doctor and you have to go tell a patient you have, terminal cancer, I can't operate on you. So, you think that's a tough decision to talk to a customer about a car, just some money. Think about that poor doctor that's got to tell somebody you got terminal cancer.
If you don't have the transparency or the guts to do that, this isn't your job.
Imagine if a doctor acted the way you did with some of these cases and just, I really don't want to talk to them. We'll just pretend it didn't happen. Hey, rub some cream on it.
From my perspective, the last thing I want to do is get down the road in something, and then the customer bails. It damages my reputation. It puts me in an adverse position with other parties. So
I always want to be able to say, I told you this could happen.
Yeah.
We're here now.
Yeah.
How do you want to operate on this?
Right. So your job is to assist the customer or to refuse, right? Your job's not to.
Here's your keys.
Thank you.
There's the door. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you coming to see me.
Matter of fact, I'm not even charging you. Just take it down the road. Get out of here.
I'm going to talk a little bit more about to me, it's not a revenue stream.
I agree.
I've met a lot of shops that have approached it as a revenue stream, and then when they've crossed some lines, and the insurers have bit back, and in some cases rightfully so. So I always get, if I put that insurer hat on, there's some times when they bite back and it is justified and it needs to happen. That was my job for a long time, was to be the one that led the bite back. But here's the thing. Do you charge a customer? And quite honestly, I love it when a shop that argues with me online that they won't charge a customer for repairs that wasn't paid for in the claim. Well, I can't charge the customer. You don't understand the size of the town I'm in, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Then next week post that they're going to start charging for this. And I'm like, what? Weren't you the one that just told me the customer wouldn't pay for this? I don't like charging the customer because I don't want other shops in town or the shops that I have to talk to think that this is my business and it's my business to try to find problems, that I profit from finding problems. This is a customer service thing to me. And if I'm pure, so to speak, in that format, it makes it real hard to disparage me should we get to the court case. So because I would do the same thing, right? If I'm sitting on the other side of the defense table and I can prove, Larry, that you charge $15,000 for every PR, $10,000 for every PRI you do, that you're making this stuff happen, that you're probably doing the cars and causing damage to them just to make this happen so you can make more money.
I have to fix my pricing. 15,000.
And I'll tell you, I get it every time I start one of these. That's the first thing I get accused of. So that's the very first thing that comes out of the adjuster's mouth for the shop's liability carrier is that, well, you must have damaged this car so that you can make money. And I go, well, I'm not getting paid. So I
Are
don't know
you an
why I would've done
expert?
that.
If you're not, then hire an expert.
Yeah.
Have them come down and try
Yeah.
and prove that. But
And I'm like, hire whatever engineer you want. But I can have that transparency. And so it takes out that first line of defense because the first thing you want to do is make me the bad guy. And I get that. Makes total sense. That's a great strategy, right? If you can separate the customer from me as well. But if I take that out right away, it's not there. That you can charge a third party. So, I mean, if you have to take the car apart to do some tear down, if you've got to store it, if you've got to write an estimate, if you've got to do some measuring, and then ultimately the third party accepts liability, you can send the charges to them and go, hey, here's what my charges are. On the ones I do, typically I don't even charge for that. I'm just like, no, just come get the car. It's cool. We'll make some arrangements. It is a great self-promotion tool to customers. So I love when a shop has PRIs that they've done in the market and can have copies of that in their shop. So when they start getting told what the market standard is, or every other shop in the town would do it and not charge you for this, I can go, well, you're absolutely right, and here's some sample work from every other shop in town. And I get to explain that to customers. So
I
it's not
believe
just
Mark
words.
used that in a few of his cases.
Mark has used that great with all of his small claims court cases.
Our shops would do this, this, and this.
Okay, well, here's the 4 cars you bought back from me from this particular shop. Here's the 3 you bought back from this shop because of this type of repair. And here's this. So if I did the work the way they did it, it would be incorrect work. So
Right.
what's your argument
And it makes
there?
a difference if you have 2 shops standing side by side, and one shop saying something doesn't have to be done, and another shop saying that it does. At that point, the customer or a judge has nothing to draw an opinion on. But when one shop says none of this has to be done, and I can go, here's cars you bought back because you didn't do it, and here's the bad repairs that happened, and here's the pictures of it, and here's the whatever, then now the customer or a judge gets to go, wait, I think I want this guy's opinion, not that guy's opinion. Works out really good. You're assisting, but not profiting, and that can be advertising, right? So you can use it respectfully. I'm not a fan of posting and going, Bob's Body Shop can't fix cars, come see us or whatever. But some of it is great to be used appropriately in some channels can be some advertising. Don't try to play the expert, right? This one is hard. There's so much that I know, right? And that I've learned from you, I've learned from Mark, I've learned from all these different people, the OEs, the places I travel. And every one of these I get involved in, the very first thing out of people's mouth is, you're not a real body shop, you're not a real expert, you don't know what you're talking about, we're gonna send an expert. And then they send in some independent adjuster who was a body man 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating that in the eyes of some people, that guy is considered more of an expert than I am. And I want to puff up and play the expert and puff my chest and try to say, here's my resume, here's how awesome I am.
Well, the insurance company sends the guy in who has his own little mini body shop restoration place that he does his own work in his backyard. And all of a sudden, that they deem him an expert, and that he took a couple of the employees and he did like a little personal training course on welding or plastic welding or whatever. It's like, oh no, he's our resident expert. Based on what?
And like I said, this is the one I struggle with. When I lose my temper and get off of my negotiating track, or I do something wrong, it's usually because of this one, because that's my Achilles heel. And it, I'm over 40. And I've been dealing with this since I was 19, being a girl in a body shop, but it is still an Achilles heel for me. It's still the play. And if I ever lose it, that's usually the one I lose it on. And that there are some problems with charging fees. Champery is something you've mentioned. That is, boy, are there lots of suits on that in New York.
Yeah. Two of my clients, New York and New Jersey, both get accused by insurance companies of champery constantly,
right?
Because they've assisted their customers in, reporting to the state insurance department about, about the insurance companies and stuff like that. So it is crazy.
Yeah. If you don't know what that is, we actually do have 2 legal classes taught by Erica Eversman, not by us, where Erica explains.
Oh, wait, there's more.
Yeah, Erica explains chamfery and what it is and what it isn't and what you need to be concerned with as a body shop. If you are a member of our C20 VIP program, which is our 5 now announced yesterday. We did announce the 6th. The 6th. So for the same price, $300 a month, you get 6 individualized monthly trainings on topics. But now you also get access to an LMS system, and 2 of the courses in there are Erica's legal. We were charging what, $1,200 for those?
Something to that effect.
Yeah. So for that to be just that alone in our VIP program is probably worth it. I should probably put something that doesn't allow you to cancel, but I don't have that in there, so you can cancel at any time. But we also encourage that you definitely have fixed fees. If you do them, don't set percentages.
Percentages are some of the worst things, especially when you get into court, because then the other side, the other lawyer is going to go like, well, so in other words, you're going to run the bill up because you get paid more on this. Oh, boy. Usually if you have a set fee, it's like, okay, well, I'm charging, $100 for this. What happens if they win? I get $100. If they lose, I get $100. If it gets thrown out of court, I already got paid $100. Doesn't matter to me what happens. Right. I got paid my money already. I'm done.
I got no skin in this game. I got
no skin in this game. That's it.
All right, so qualifying the customer and qualifying whether you even want to inspect this, right? So the first thing that I always want to know is, what are their concerns? Why are you here? Why are you coming to see me? Obviously, this is different if it's a vehicle that you were working on and suddenly discovered, oh crap, somebody else has fixed this before. But I want them to fully address everything that they want me to know about. There's a couple of things that I'm looking for here. One, I can find out that the headlights don't work all on my own. Sure, I'm competent and capable of doing that. But I want them to tell me their story. I want them to tell me how they got here. I want them to tell me how many times that they took it back, what was said when they took it back.
Well, I got off at exit 22. I made a left and then made a right. No, not that way, how you got here. What made you come to me?
Right. If we go back to Monday, the opening day last week of the fair, and I talk about having a conversation, I want them talking 80% of the time and me only 20% of the time. This is part of it. I want to know their concerns. As they're telling me their concerns, I'm kind of getting to know them. So we'll go through later on in December. I'm going to come back with a psychology class on how to judge people, how to make quick decisions on people, when you first hear them talk or meet them. But I want to try to get to know the customer. So I want to know what their concerns are, and I want to make a list. I want them to know that their concerns are important, and then I want to know the story of how those concerns came to be. Were these concerns immediately? Like, did you walk up the day that it was delivery and go, well, I didn't like it, but I took it anyway? Or are these concerns that you discovered over time?
Right.
So for instance, it was a couple of months later and you started noticing this door didn't work right because, hey, when I picked the car up, I picked it up alone. I got in the driver's side, everything was great. But a couple days later when I was picking up my kids from soccer practice, I had a problem with the rear door or whatever. When did you discover these problems? Who discovered these problems? You? Or your neighbor at a barbecue went, wow, your door doesn't match, right? So who am I pleasing? Am I trying to please you or am I trying to please your neighbor?
Right, exactly.
And who's really in control of this reinspection process? Was this a first party or a third party loss? Extremely important on what our options are for the customer. Did they go, who was the repairer? Which shop did you use? Why did you use that shop? So was it your choice? Was it a DRP direction that you went with? It tells me whether I have a warranty. Larry and I talk about all the time, there's a lot of things I can do when there's an insurer involved, not because, oh, that's a bank account.
Yeah.
But quite honestly, and I'll say it, as a DRP director, I'm very in tune to making sure that that model works. If I get too much out of that model that doesn't work, then I can't pump claims through it. So when a shop messes up, my general reaction is tell them to take care of it. You need to make this go away. You need to take care of it. And their agreement with me is that it's not going to cost me any money to
Right.
take care of it and make it go away. So generally, I have not had a problem with an insurer really getting involved and kind of helping move this car along and make the policyholder or the claimant in that case happy. I also want to know if it's a repair I've had a previous issue with or a previous post-repair inspection with. Did it go well or not? There is a repair here in Arkansas, and I think they're on their like 6th buyback. And quite honestly, very easy to deal with. And they are very responsive. They're very accountable. They're very transparent. And when the customer comes in, I can kind of confidently tell them, hey, this particular repairer really does honestly care about quality. And the ones I've had with them in the past have settled very easily, and they've done everything they can, including we had one where they paid for 2 weeks of rental and put the kid in a convertible. So he had a convertible Camaro for 2 weeks. So I know if it's that shop, things are going to go well. There are some other shops that I know if it's them, it's not going to go well, and I can very easily tell the customer, hey, they're not going to want to pay this, and you're going to need an attorney.
Yeah.
So, was there a relationship with the DRP? Is this cosmetic or structural? So a lot of times a customer will come in and they don't like the paint, and really that doesn't mean I'm not going to look at the car. I will look at the car.
Right.
But a cosmetic issue, I'm just going to send them back and go, hey, tell them you're not happy with the paint.
Yeah, I'm not satisfied with this, that, or the other thing, and I need to get this taken care of. Or there's something major wrong.
Yeah. Now, this one's very important. Does the customer have all of the paperwork? So we have a new trend in the industry. I'm not really sure how it got started because, if I go back, I left the insurance industry in 2008. But back then, the customer had to get a full copy of the estimate before they could walk out of the shop. Now I'm getting involved in cases where the customer is getting more of an invoice than a detailed line item estimate. So the customer comes to me and they have an invoice that kind of says how much in parts, how much in labor, how much in whatever, and I need the detailed estimate. So I want to know if the customer has all the paperwork. Do they have the estimate? Do they have any invoices? Do they have the scan reports, the measurement report? And depending on what they tell me, I'll ask for that. If they go, I don't know, I don't have any of it, before we do anything, so before I raise the flag and say I have a problem, I want that customer to go back and ask for those copies. And not to say I want the copies because I'm going to have somebody look at your car. I need the copies, and I want everyone cooperative. So I'll tell the customer, swing back by there, tell them you'd like copies of everything. And that way, for whatever reason you want to tell them, just tell them you want copies of everything. I've only had one instance where a shop refused. I was like, okay, hey, we tried. It's great. We'll go from here. We'll do something different. But make sure you get a copy of that. The other thing that I'll have the customer do if they can't get it all from the shop is I'll have them call their insurer and say, hey, I'd like copies of what was submitted to you for
Some
final
insurance
payment.
companies, everything's on your claim section online.
Yeah.
And you can just get everything, even pictures.
I can't tell you, I've never had an insurer not send a customer all the documentation that they've had.
I've had shops not do it.
Right. Never had an insurer do that. They're always real cooperative in that situation. All right, so at this point now, I'm going to have managing the customer's expectations. This is sometimes the hardest part of the job, right? And why sometimes I like to do that and let you do this out here. I'll just manage the customer. First of all, I have to let them know fees. If there are going to be fees, what's applicable, what's there.
Right.
For me, my fees don't start unless I have to go to court, but I let them know what that is. And I let them know what that possibly is going to be and what those fees are going to cost. If the vehicle has to be deemed non-drivable, there will be storage. There may be, some additional tear down, whatever. You want to go over the fees with the customer. Whatever your payment expectations are, you need to go over that up front. So if you want to be paid by the consumer first, you need to say that. If you want to be paid through an attorney or you say you're going to bill your fees to a third party, you need to say that. You need to make sure that everything is transparent.
Yep.
Do not hide your fees. Don't tell a customer you'll take care of everything, and then once this gets started, you slide a third party, whether it's the shop at fault, some $10,000 bill for your services. That is honestly unacceptable, and I cannot defend that. So I don't even know how that even got started and what's going on. I don't blame repairers for being upset when that happens to them.
And
I'd be upset too.
I've seen they want to charge all sorts of fees. They want to charge, for writing the estimate, talking to the customer, doing this, doing that, and then massive amounts of storage fees and stuff like that. Yeah. So it does become
some of
an
these
issue.
inspection fees I can't get over.
I don't get it either.
I may have a couple hours in the inspection. I don't have $4,500 worth of it in the inspection. You need to talk about the predictive outcome. So I talked about that earlier. Like there's a shop in the state that I know is going to be very easy to deal with and is going to be very transparent with the customer. And I can confidently tell the customer that this isn't going to be bad. There are some times that I can tell the customer, this is going to be tough, and you may need an attorney, and are you willing to go down that road before we start? Sometimes I can tell them, this may be what I would do, and if something happens, great, but if it don't, then know what your next steps are going to be. I need them to understand their role, that I am going to expect them to get me some information, that I am also going to expect them, and I have to tell them, at that point, I need you to shut up. So now that you've brought this in and we're going to look at it, I need you not to talk to anybody else for a while until we get back together.
Yeah.
So
don't answer any questions.
Yeah. And that there's going to be a lot of paperwork to do. So the same forms that I need to actually fix the car, I need them to do a post-repair inspection, and I actually have a few more when we're into post-repair inspection. I need to let them know what their options are, right? You can do this, and these are your possible outcomes. If you do this, these are your possible outcomes. Or you can do this, and this may cost you a lot. This may take a couple of years. I want them to know what it has. All right, so let's go over what their options are. They can contact the insurer in the shop after you have found problems that are documented.
Right, something you can prove and show.
Don't call super early before you've looked at the car and say, hey, I got one of yours, or I got another one of yours. I don't want anyone else involved. I don't want the pot stirring or the water getting muddy until we know what we have and what we don't have.
Don't show your hand.
Right. Would you play poker showing your cards, right? State DOI, Department of Insurance, or a DMV complaint. So sometimes their option is, hey, you can just file a complaint. So if a body shop is not regulated by the DOI, filing a body shop complaint with the DOI makes no sense, but you may have regulations in that state. California is a great example.
Yes.
Right? You may find that even in other states, the shop didn't do what they were supposed to. They didn't provide the right estimate. They didn't do mileage in and out. They didn't do some things that are there. If you find that you think the insurer had some complacency in the event or the problem or interfered in it, that may be a DOI issue for the customer to make, not you.
Yeah, right, not you.
You may want to make a formal demand letter. So at some point,
that helps.
When it's not something that's in a DRP environment, if it's a shop that I know is going to, hey, these shop isn't going to be easy to deal with, then one of the things might be to have the customer, they may have to hire an attorney. That attorney may need to write a formal demand letter.
Oh, but he's going to charge me for the letter.
He's going to charge you for the letter. He is. He's going to charge you for his time involved.
Yes.
You may have to file suit.
That happens.
So, or you can do nothing and just live with it. And that happens too.
That happens too.
So, I have a lot of customers that pull out of here and go, I don't have any money options. Unless you want to spend a lot of money.
I mean, I love sometimes I get, oh, she's a single mom, she has 4 kids, she just lost a job and stuff. Okay, that's all well and good. It has nothing to do with the repair of the vehicle or what's going on. Well, it wasn't a DRP, she chose to shop. Okay, and? Well, she needs some help. Okay.
Are you going to file, are you going to pay for the attorney?
Are you going to pay for everything? I'll look at the car for free. Oh, well, okay, so then you really don't care about anything else.
Right.
I'm not paying for it. I'm sorry. Just that I'm not, I'm not going to pay for all her medical, all her legal fees and do the inspection, and you're giving me the sub story and you don't want to pay anything. Yeah. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get it. I like to help consumers too.
Yeah.
But at some point, if I know an attorney's got to get hired, I'm not going to pay for that. I have to pay for all my attorneys that you cost me. So I mean, all right, is a lawyer necessary? And sometimes they are.
Sometimes no.
I usually recommend shops, if you're going to get into this, that you have a pretty good attorney on hand.
Don't go looking for one after you've already started a forest fire.
We've had problems really finding attorneys here. I mean, every state has problems. I keep pushing state associations to really start finding attorneys.
And train them.
And have a list of attorneys that shops within that state. They don't have to be in that town, because if you're licensed by the bar in that state, I mean, you could be in Houston and the car could be in Amarillo, and it's okay. The required forms. This goes wrong on a good majority of the PRIs I get involved in after the fact from shops. So you take the car in and you go, yeah, Ms. Smith, we're going to take a look at it for you. And people forget to get the forms. When you forget to get the forms and you don't cover this and you put the car in storage and start charging fees, this allows me as the insurer to come back under what most states allow as what's called a writ of replevin, and get the car taken from you and then have you pay me sometimes $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 on what may have been a $5,000 storage bill.
Go Google that. It'll be an important process for
you.
Now,
again, in Erica's class, she covers in her contract how she prevents a writ of replevin from happening. So that was one of our tools in the insurance industry, and just contracts. Contracts make fences. Fences make friends. Your reforms need to have a description of the issues and the problems. We make the customer write out why they're here. Even though we've done the interview, even though we've physically talked for them, I want in their own handwriting, in their own words, to tell me why they're here. I need an authorization to inspect the vehicle, but not to perform destructive testing.
Which is basically some disassembly and stuff. Now that's usually for a post-repair inspection. Not, I started doing repairs to the car's hitting the left 3/4 here, I take off the fender, the hood, the bumper cover, I take off that fender, and I find the rails messed up. Okay, stop.
Right.
Now you go from there. But we're talking, somebody drives in and says, oh, you know, my hood doesn't match up with the bumper, and I want you to look at it.
Right. So we're not doing any destructive testing. I don't have my pick and hammer out and I'm chipping away at welds or anything right now.
Or
right?
grinding down body filler.
Right. Oh, I love it when they go do that to a car without an inspection form.
I've had cases where people took apart the car, did all sorts of testing and stuff, and like they didn't have any authorization or proof, and the judge tossed it, and they had to buy the car or fix it or do whatever they had to do with it.
My first line of defense, in my seat I used to have, was to not to have a defense. So if I can just get something tossed, then I don't have to do a whole lot of work. So that's the first thing I'm going to try to do, and that's the first thing any good attorney that is hired to represent a shop is going to do too. Is just, if I don't have to defend it, I don't have to do
I've looked at reports for attorneys and said, well, they did this, this, and this. Why don't you just get this tossed on this fact? He says, that's the first thing I'm going to try, but I want to see your opinion. Can you do this? Yeah, I can do this. All right, let me see what's going to happen. I'm going to put an order in to toss this. So
yeah. I need an authorization to scan. You obviously, because we're sending data up and down, we want to get that authorization. I need an authorization to measure the vehicle, because putting it up and holding it and anchoring it.
And this is not for your normal blueprint or your pre-repair look at, your triage, whatever the hell you're calling it, for collision repair. Because usually it's an authorization to repair. Part of your repair process is to scan, do this, do this, do this, and this. But this is different. This is after the repairs are done and you're looking at the car, and it's basically you're getting an authorization to diagnose the car. Because if you come up with nothing, someone's going to say, well, why'd you measure it? Why'd you do the wheel alignment? Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Why'd you scan it? You charged me all this money and nothing's wrong. Well, because you wrote out what was wrong, I had to verify it. Yeah. No different than going to a dealer and saying, well, the car makes a funny noise when I do this. We'll make the radio louder and the noise goes away.
Roll the windows up.
Roll the windows up.
So when I'm measuring for a post-repair inspection, this isn't just like get your 4 corners, check another 4 points in the front. I got 8 measuring points, we're good to go.
Yeah, you gotta measure
I'm going to measure front to rear, every point. I'm going to have 20, 30 points of inspection on those to try to figure out a full story of what the car is telling me. I may need an authorization to check the alignment. If I decide after partial disassembly that more disassembly of more of a involved nature and destructive testing is needed, I'm going to have a form to do that. I recommend that that's a second step. You don't throw all these forms to the customer up front. Authorization to actually perform the destructive testing or sample testing. So if I need to test welds, it means that car is going to be non-drivable when I'm done. A lot of times that's my negotiation tactic, is I go, I'm happy to do this to prove it, but when I do, the car is non-drivable. You don't have a good sale vehicle at that point. It's not going to go through the auction the same. But if this is what you want me to do, we'll do it.
Well, that happened with that Maxima in Ohio with the Mike Anderson case, and I said to the lawyer, I said, look, I find dividend. He says, no, go ahead, pull the seam sealer out. And I said, all right, well, you want me to do a destructive test in the weld? He goes, no problem. And I went pop, and literally the panel was glued on, so there was no welds. It started popping off, and I said, you want me to pull on it? He says, pull on it. I pulled on it, and the body panel came off, and he actually videotaped it with his iPhone. That the lawyer did, and he gave me authorization to pull. All right, no problem. Yep. You're representing the customer.
You're
I'll
in
pull
charge.
Off.
Right.
Yeah, now the car's not drivable.
Right.
Now you got storage fees and everything else.
I also like authorizations to send off samples. So if I'm going to try to prove, and then later this afternoon at 2 o'clock, we're going to be talking about what the OE requires. 3M's going to drop in with us. If I want to know what material you used, seam sealers, adhesives, etc., then I need authorization
to send it to the lab. We've had the lab test and say it's not this material or that material. I mean, thank God that most of these adhesive companies for the OEM have like specific colors. So it does make it a little bit easier. It's like, oh, well, I use 3M. Well, they don't make black glue. Yeah. So we got a problem already.
Yeah, so authorization to store the vehicle, safeguarding of components. This gets in a lot of the QRAs. So some of this stuff, if I'm going to store the vehicle for court, can get expensive. there are certain facilities. It doesn't just mean that I push it in the back of my shop.
It's probably the best thing is the lawyer will probably move it to a facility, which is actually cheaper than what some shops want to charge for storing a car. And it's probably better off for the shop liability not to have that. These guys come basically with like their own little plastic hefty bag, like a CSI team, and everything that's there they take with you.
Yeah.
And when you go to the place, it's a big open facility, and they open up this big plastic bag, and then all the stuff is there. And it's like, okay, and they have ladders, and they have all sorts of stuff that you can look at.
We were doing that. So one of the things that I really loved about State Farm's crash unit was we got involved in a lot of recalls. So a lot of recalls that happened around the country actually started in the crash unit. And like Dateline NBC, I think, did a story on the Ford tire issue, the Firestone tire issues. And that started in our unit. But I mean, we would store these cars in secured warehouses, and I would have to go get the tire and bag it and tag it and then take the tire to the lab and have it tested and verify that it's now going to be part of the recall.
There's a chain of evidence, yes.
Yeah,
stuff that we didn't
and that was
follow.
my first time getting involved with that and realizing, oh man, there's a lot to this. I can't just go grab a
So
tire
you finally
throw
made
it.
State Farm, you made the crash team, and you were the tire bagger girl.
I was a tire bagger girl, but I learned so many great lessons because it wasn't about just driving by and taking a tire and throwing it in the back of my trunk and driving it over to the lab. There was steps and so you learn. Sometimes sweeping the floors, you learn. That's why it's good to be there. All right. So the other form that you may need is authorization to allow other experts to inspect the vehicle. That's joint
if you're going to
inspections.
hire the expert to come in, you probably need that. If you have a lawyer involved, you're not going to need that because the lawyer is going to represent the customer, and he doesn't. His form basically gives him carte blanche to do whatever he wants to do.
Awesome. All right. So gathering the facts of the evidence, the facts of the loss. I need to interview the customer because I'm not looking at the car damage. So when the car's damaged, it'll tell me a lot of stories. Now, some of the things I asked for, besides photos besides the estimates and other things, is did you happen to take any photos of the accident scene? Do you have any photos of the car before it was repaired? But I need to ask them a lot of questions about what happened in the loss. That's going to help me understand what I'm looking for, but also what the other shop should have done or shouldn't have done, right? So how did it occur? Wet, dry, right? There's a lot of times that suspension, transmissions, and other things get involved depending on what the road conditions were. Was it night? Was it day? Did you hit a vehicle? Did you hit another object? All of the questions that I need to ask about the facts of the loss. So this goes back to our pre-estimate routine and interviewing the customer. I need to know how many people were in there, right? Because now I need to know, did the shop do the seatbelt tests? And then I need to go back and verify the seatbelts myself. Did you have any issues before the repairs were done? Was there things that were wrong with the car then? What issues have been uncovered by the vehicle owner? So the vehicle, and I will tell you this, as soon as a customer gets a car back from a shop, they drive without the radio on for a while because you want to know if it's okay. So there may be things that, sure, probably there before, but now you're noticing them, right? Noises, shaking, is it pulling? Do you have lights coming on and off? Are there driving issues, steering issues? Do certain features of your vehicle not work anymore in your opinion? One of the number one things we get back is when my Bluetooth doesn't work or whatever, well, because they didn't reconnect it for you or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Right. Well, that's all I got to do? Sure, let's go out there and do it.
The worst I find is you have some low entry level vehicle, and the rental was actually like the top of the line model, and you've been driving around in that, and all of a sudden you get back into your cheaper economical car, and you're like, well, this is strange and that's strange. Well, you were just in a car that was
Right.
$10,000, $15,000 more than yours. There's going to be some differences.
Sometimes what they find is very real.
Yes.
And so in our industry, we immediately dismiss a lot of what the customer tells us, thinking that we know better instead of...
No, sometimes I think it's just ignorance. I mean, we see a lot of times with estimators, they just push things off. It's like, oh, that can't be part of it.
But I've watched shops. I mean, we did an audit in Texas one time, and I sat in the lobby for a couple days, and they had probably about 6 or 7 comebacks in 1 week. and I'm listening to conversations.
My favorite was the blown engine.
I'm listening to conversations with the customer on the phone, and also the customers that were standing in the lobby. And there was a general, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's not a car guy. He's just, whatever. We generally move to dismiss the customer quickly, thinking we know, but we do this every day. I know what you don't know. You don't do this business. You don't get it. And I wish, when we go into a doctor's office and the doctor dismisses my concerns, and I'm going, I feel like I got pressure in my chest. I don't feel like I have any energy. If the doctor looked at us, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just fat. Forget about it and get on with it and go. We would be like, how dare the doctor not take my concerns seriously. And if we posted that on social media, everybody would, you should get another doctor. Here's my doctor. I recommend him greatly. He's got great bedside. So we expect the kind of service and everything else that we do, but then we don't deliver that service to our customers when they're in our lobby. So even if you got to fake it till you make it, until you understand or master the concept of empathy, don't dismiss what a customer tells you, but we definitely want to know their issues. Are there visual issues with the car? It's a fantastic job painting that door, Larry.
Panel painted it. It's white.
White's white.
White's white, man. Just right out of the can. You just mix
Right.
it, put it on, and that's it.
All right, so is there gaps? Is there paint issues? Most of what we start with is always this. It starts as either the paint, I don't like the paint, or I don't think something lines up. And then as we start to peel it away, it becomes something worse, so to speak. So when this happens and it ends up with me, I'm just like, God, if you'd only had a QC process, you wouldn't even be here. So discoloration, color, the closure panel operation, in other words, doors. Very few customers open their hoods, but doors aren't closing right.
Right.
The one we did originally, the kid that got the Camaro for the 2-week rental on the Volkswagen, the rear door just didn't close. Volkswagen has a way of your doors close and they kind of suck themselves in.
And he's like, well, it doesn't bother me so much, and I'm not so worried about it. But all right, take a look at it. It wasn't so big on it.
Yeah.
Just had a little complaint.
But then we opened it up and was like, yeah, boy.
Yeah, really bad. There's a video. We have a video. We have the whole video on that.
Yeah, and an interview with the customer. So
and
voice
the
the
customer.
Yep. So components are misaligned, etc. Sometimes the customer comes in with drivability issues, right?
I had one where the guy let go of the steering wheel. The car made a left-hand turn, a sharp left-hand turn, literally just whoop.
So we need to think about, I may have to take this car on a test drive. I may get an authorization to do a test drive form before I take that out there. But I have to determine before I put it on the road, I'm going to bring it in, I'm going to put it up, and I'm going to make sure, is this safe for me to drive?
Is it safe for me to even drive it? Yeah.
The last thing I want to do is experience the wreck during the test drive. Pulling or drifting noises, binding, tire pressure, etc. Tire wear.
Tire wear is a big thing. You'll get a lot of estimators go, like you said before. I've been doing this for years. I know what I'm talking about. You're not an expert. This is 2 months later and your tires are bald. That's not our problem.
Right.
Yeah, that's a huge problem.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Why are the tires balding out? What's going on with this car? Is the car fighting itself as it goes down? The geometry of the vehicle fighting itself as it goes down the roadway? What's the issue going on here?
Right. Tires shouldn't wear.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually they wear out when you're
Well, they wear, but they shouldn't wear that it's down to bare rubber when the car first came in. Now, if you did your due diligence, well, what did the tire look like when it came in? Well, I don't have a picture of that. Well, you didn't take a look at tire pressure and tire, tread depth? Wow.
My
well,
favorite,
that's the manual says. You're supposed to check all that stuff.
My favorite is we had one come in and the shop had paid for 2 sets of tires over 6 months, but never really checked the structure. I was like, why did you keep throwing tires at this thing?
Because it'll fix it. Just like when somebody sends in for 4-wheel alignments. Yeah. The car kept going out of alignment. Yes.
So thanks for buying 2 sets of tires. You're now buying a car.
Yes, that comes in handy.
All right. So the vehicle data. I need the frame reports. Right. I need to, if the car sustained structural damage in the shop that said they fixed the car, charge, set up, measure, and pull. There should be a report somewhere that they can show me of their pre-measure and their post-measure. Now, anecdotal story. Mm-hmm. One shop that we got involved with proudly wanted to send us their post-repair report to show that the car was repaired, and the post-repair report they submitted had several boxes out of tolerance. So thank you for giving me the proof that the car is still not structurally correct.
I like when you said to me, says, I'll call them back. Okay, well, about what? Well, I want to know if I'm crazy. Well, you're crazy. You hang out with me. And then, what do you think about this? And I was like, I didn't get a picture yet. Then she says, you sent it. And I was like, ooh. So am I correct about this? Yeah, you're correct about it. Let me call the shop back. I'll speak to them.
Right.
And they were all proud. And it's like, you might have missed a class or two on how to use your equipment.
Because I was like, is this maybe the pre-pull report?
I think you even said to the guy, I made a mistake. You made a mistake. You sent me the pre.
I need the post. No, that's you can see clearly.
Clearly we fixed it.
Clearly it shows we fixed it.
It got worse. The picture you sent me first, the car wasn't that bad. You put more damage into it on the second one.
Yeah. So this is a classic example. That one was a classic example of why you need to make sure the people that you're going to use doing third parties measurements actually know how to use the equipment, because if you were using that shop, you would have been in trouble. All right. If they scanned and there was any DTCs or any reports, I need those. We talk about all the time that as a shop, you should be documenting your file. That documentation belongs to the customer. It's their vehicle, right?
I love all the time. It's like, oh no, it got accidentally deleted. Oh.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Sidebar: if a car gets pulled and is going to go somewhere else because they've been talked to leaving our shop and going somewhere else, these are the things that I tell the customer that they need to ask for. So hey, make sure you get copies of all these and then bring it on back by. I'd love to take a look at it. Right? I'm going to do paint mill thickness requirements or checks, not because I think they painted the car wrong, but I want to map where they did repair. Right, so that's going to help me on my estimate.
Well, a lot of times you'll find out, like, you'll be measuring a car and you'll do this. The hood was done, the fender was done, and then like you'll see the numbers drop dramatically, and then it gets back to like what the factory would normally be. I'll even check the roof sometimes to hear real quick and go, hey, these are the right parameters, and you can know they blended in this area here.
I can empirically show where you stopped painting.
Or the hood was paid to be replaced, and there's a ton of larger numbers here. And I think they did body work here.
Right.
And that might say, the lawyer might say to me, hey, listen, I want you to grind that down and then measure it or drill a hole and see, how deep it is and stuff.
Right. All right, so I also want to check components, right? So I'm going to look and say, what parts were replaced? Did you replace those with OE, not OE? What does the estimate say you did? So if the estimate says that this is a new hood and a new bumper and they're both OE, then I should be able to verify that. Or thankfully, most shops leave stickers on parts, so I don't have to work too hard to verify whether it was an OE part or not. So
did you get Starbucks or Sunbucks?
Yeah. So was the repair done by the book? So one of the things that I want you to understand is that very clearly, as an insurer, I'm not required to repair a vehicle to any OE standard. That's not what my policy tells me to do. To be told to have to do that has to come from a judge, right? Mm-hmm. But I understand when an insurer says we don't owe for that. That's cool. That's your decision. As a repairer, I am governed by other laws within the state that says I have to repair the car correctly and safely if that's what I'm charging to do. So if you believe that you are protected because you do what the insurer pays for, that is not always the case. So just because somebody told you they weren't going to pay for it didn't mean you have to do it. So I'm going to look and say, did you repair this car by the book? Right?
And that's all the judge wants to hear.
Right. So if you decided not to charge for something or not charge the customer to fix it correctly, that's your problem. But the absence of, in other words, I didn't stand next to any body shop in court when I was a DRP manager. That all fell on you. Operations charged for but not performed. This happens a lot, right? Operations performed but not charged for. Sometimes that happens too, and we have to get to those. Parts charged for but not performed.
Right.
Happens a lot. Right? You write an estimate and then the technician goes, I didn't need that part or whatever. And we don't make those corrections. All right. We have done all of this, and I have still not made a phone call. I have not called the other party, be it the insurance company or the shop at this point that I think may have repaired a vehicle wrong. I've not made a phone call. I am gathering all my facts and my evidence. That way I can have an intelligent conversation with either party. Should the consumer tell me that they want that to be done. So my initial inspections, I've got all the paperwork, I've got the estimates, I've got the final bill. I have visually inspected and reviewed the vehicle. I have done minimal teardown. If it's something that I can twist a I guess what would be a reusable clip or whatever, and I can pull that off, I will pull that off and take a look, right? I have identified the replacement parts, sources, types. I've looked at the photographs. I've looked at anywhere that I need to drill into. I have taken photographs. I have photographed all of my measurements. I have photographed what I find or don't find wrong with a car. I have photographs of weld flanges or anything that I need to do for that. That may mean I can visually see on the backside, put paint over a lot of things, I can't see it, but on the backside, I'm going to be able to tell what you did. I have researched the OEM. I have all of the proof in a comparative form to what the shop estimate says they did, right? And then I check my mill thickness gauges, right?
Right.
And I don't want to go into too much of this.
We do it in the class. We go over a lot of this stuff.
We do it in the class.
We explain it through thoroughly.
But there is a big difference between what I think something is, and sometimes a shop will get a big number and they go, oh my God, this is huge, and it may not be the case. We could be completely within specs and have a big number on the gauge, right?
This panel shows evidence to suggest it was painted. and it's been painted probably at least twice based on the normal numbers from GM's, from Ford's paint thickness in the repair information. So this has probably been painted twice.
Yep.
Okay, which there was some rust and some issues and some evidence on this one and stuff. But yeah, but that's within specs, because I'll say this much: most paint manufacturers, their guarantee is 12 mils of paint material thickness. That's not including body filler or anything else that might be underneath there.
Right.
And we actually went over some math for people, and that's in the class. We must spend 20 minutes on this alone, explaining it on like 3 or 4 screens.
Right. So whatever mill gauge you buy, you need to spend time learning it, how it works with steel, how it works with aluminum. When you get some numbers that are huge, it doesn't mean that, oh my God, this panel's caved and paved. It may be within spec. So make sure that you know what that means.
Stop being concerned over, if a panel was repaired and you're at 120, 124 mils, you probably don't have an issue if it was paid to be repaired.
Mm-hmm. Right. Some shops will jump too soon, but make sure you know what you're talking about before you start talking about some things. So again, you've got it here, Larry. A repaired area could be acceptable up to 127 mils. That doesn't mean they did a bad job.
The amount of paint thickness from the manufacturer.
Right. You need to account for any adhesive film, anything that you need to have.
You might have to make separate test samples on steel and aluminum of 3M adhesive, fuser adhesive, dowel that's made for either Benz or Audi, or for Benz or BMW, or the 3M that's European just for Audi. Get some of those in place, maybe with rivets in there, and just have little sample coupons of material from the vehicle, and just do some measurements, and you have some exemplar stuff to say, okay, I have a basis, I have a database that I can say what goes with what and what doesn't go with things.
And you vehicle, because this vehicle's been brought in, and I know something's been done to it. I may need to go find one that I know nothing has been done to it, and look at it to be able to have a comparison to what I'm doing.
And listen, this is why you should, do film thickness checks on every car that comes into your shop. No different than scanning it or pre-measuring the car. Those are the 3 things you do beforehand.
The one thing that we're showing on the screen here is that whatever tool you use needs to be calibrated, and you need to document your calibration before you begin measuring on the car. So it's nice to have it in the file that, yes, I do understand this has to be calibrated. Yes, I did do the calibrations with all the little tools and equipment that's there that you have to do before I started touching this car.
Well, the biggest thing that I've found, and with the Alcometer is that it is ISO certified and calibrated and stuff. And, everyone else that does these paint things that I go, against them, and sometimes they got $49, $50 Amazon paint film thickness gauges. And I was like, well, did you do your calibration? How do I know your system's even right? And they didn't calibrate it. And I show the photos of my different little plastic thicknesses that tell me what the differences are. And this is, a plus or minus 0.3, for accuracy, which 0.3 mils is like next to nothing. So, I show my calibrations, zero it out, and I start doing my measurements, and I have proof of, once again, it's a little bit of eyewash, but the judge looks at it and goes, all right, well, you calibrated yours, where's yours? And then I'll bring in, it's like, well, I really can't accept his measurements. It's a $39 unit. This is, give me a $500 unit.
But I got it off Amazon.
I got it off Amazon.
Right. There is some documentation. We talked about some of what you need. There are a few things you might want to think about.
Oh, look, my Uber driver.
I like the photographs. Anything that the customer can give me at accident scene or with the vehicle damage before the shop touched it. I sometimes need any accident reports, the police reports, any of that information. Any estimates that were given on the car.
Well, the accident report sometimes will give you the temperature, well, not the temperature, but the
street conditions.
The street conditions, light or dark out, the positions of the vehicles or where they were coming from. Yeah, I know police reports, unless a police officer actually witnessed the accident, is usually one lie versus another lie, but at least they got the location right. And I could always go back on Amazon or not Amazon, on Google Maps and look and see what the topography is of the ground area and the area itself. Is it sandy? I can even drive by there, and I can go take a look in case I have to see a scene.
Side note, I usually ask if any recorded statements have already been given before I've seen them. And a lot of times I can get these, right? But I also am, these days with the way phones are, customers sometimes record their side as well, and so a lot of times I just ask, were there any recorded statements given, and do you have copies?
Listen, I've seen cases tank because Photos were taken by the other side, and something happened between the time you left that accident and the time it was looked at.
All right. So I want to talk real quickly about photos. So please understand that when you're taking photos now for a post-repair inspection, this is completely different than taking photos for an estimate. So you're going to have some rulers, you're going to have some things in these photos that you don't necessarily have in your photos for when you're repairing a car. You're trying to tell a story of what you saw and how you saw it, because you're looking at the car without some third party watching over you. And so you're going to have to be able to tell a story. They may send in an expert later, and you want to make sure that you know what not to R&I. You want, so if you believe that you're going to have to take some things off that are like, so we talked about, we had Nissan yesterday, 2 days ago. Nissan interior parts, so trim panels, etc., most of those are non-reusable. Right. So we're going to want to make sure that we have that, right? Or that we covered with the customer. Once I take these off, I can't put them back in. This is going to cost you. Make sure that you don't do anything that requires heavy tooling to R&I at this point.
Don't be pulling an engine out.
Yeah, you can lift it in the air, but don't get too super hyper involved at the initial post-repair inspection. If you do R&I, because like Larry said, you're doing a repair, and as you start to do the repair and perform the R&Is necessary for the repair, you discover that there has been a previous repair that is an issue, just stop immediately, walk back inside, and you've got to call the customer. There's some conversations that have to be found before you do that. All right, what are the legal ramifications of going too far too fast? A lot of stuff can be non-admissible in court.
Yeah.
And then that can cost the whole claim and what the customer was trying to do.
What you think the law should be and what the judge tells you the law is two completely different things. Remember, it's not about the truth, it's about the law.
Right.
That's always what it's about, and the facts you can present in the law.
You jump too far too fast. And so we talk about, I still haven't made a call yet. I'm not called anybody. I'm notified that I've got an issue. And you call Miss Smith and go, Miss Smith, Bob's Body Shop totally screwed up your car. It's unacceptable, unsafe. You're going to die if you drive this. You could be sued. So, and especially if it comes out later that you're wrong. So, you want to make sure that you have all that covered. You jump too far too fast, you get a denial letter from the insurance company, right? And again,
and if they're out of it on a DRP type situation, you're going to court.
Right.
Which can be expensive, and all of a sudden now this whole fun and game that you played because you read it on Facebook from somebody else, or maybe got the wrong advice, now becomes this, ooh, what do I do now? I got this car in pieces, I got this, I got that, and like, who pays for the lawyer, the attorney? I got no signed paperwork. Right. And now the customer's suing you for a repair you didn't even screw up, but you screwed up the case.
Right. And it's an interesting lot, it's dancing. If I'm just looking at a car and going, hey, it wasn't fixed right, or hey, I can still see some damage on it, cool. That's one thing. When I start calling an insurer and telling them you didn't handle the claim right, there is missed damage that you owe for, that's different.
That could be a supplement. Now you're actually calling up for a supplement by saying you're looking for, you didn't pay for damages that are there.
And in most states, it's not. So, we just.
And the insurer's not responsible.
Well, we just looked at one out in a state out west, and technically, you as a shop can't call and ask for additional money. So technically, in that state, any shop asking for a supplement is practicing law without a license. Now, some of it is overlooked because if we all had to get attorneys to ask for supplements, then the whole insurance system wouldn't work.
Right.
But it's seen completely differently when you're the post-repair inspection shop calling up and going, you owe more money, you missed stuff. And sometimes that means that forces the vehicle to be a total loss. So how I have those conversations are, there's a little dance. You could get a denial from the shop, right? So if I jump too far, too soon, too fast, and everybody gets defensive, it's real hard for my customer to get what they need. And that's, I sometimes still get so mad I jump too hard too fast. And I have to go, God, I know better. Why did I do that?
Listen, you call some shops and you say on the phone, they're going to say, hey, how about you go duck off?
Yeah.
Screw me,
and I can
sue
have
me.
It means that I can
is a big
run
problem,
things, and it's now not admissible.
That's a legal thing of you touched this and shouldn't have, and now it's going to get tossed.
So after I've done my visual inspection and I have a case or I don't have a case, or I have evidence or I don't have evidence, then the next step is I call the customer. I don't call anyone else at all. I call the customer, I break everything down, and I ask the customer, what do you want to do? And that's when I have to tell them what their steps are. You may need an attorney. This may be easy, whatever it is. The customer makes the call. I don't want to make that clear. The customer makes the call, not just to tell you what to do, but it is always good if the customer notifies the repair shop and says, I have a problem. It's not good if you pick up the phone and I go, hey, Larry, got another one over here you screwed up, man. You want to come take a look at it?
No, duck you. Sue me.
Yeah, right. It's better off if Miss Smith says, hey, Larry, you fixed my car a couple months ago. I had a few problems. I brought it back to you a couple times. We couldn't make it happy. I did go over and get another opinion. They've looked at it. They have some concerns. This is what they're thinking. His conversation with Miss Smith is going to be completely different than his conversation with me is going to be. So don't jump in the way of that. You are not an attorney. You are not Miss Smith's legal representative.
Right.
Now, if Larry wants to say, I don't understand what he could have found, Miss Smith can give Larry permission to call me, and Miss Smith can give me permission to talk to Larry in a certain way. But it's not my job to pick up the phone and call Larry and tell him he screwed up a car. Come down here and take a look at it.
And don't even negotiate with them. Just tell them, hey, look, this is what I found. However you want to handle it, you'll speak to it. I know she's talking to an attorney, and you'll speak to him.
Now, sidebar, there are some shops that like I said, I've got 6 with one shop. I find them very easy to deal with. And a lot of times I'll ask Miss Smith, if you'd like me to just go ahead and make a courtesy call right now with you here,
right?
I'll call the shop manager and talk to him, right?
Which is really sad when you call up and go, hey, we got another one here, one of yours. I'm here with the customer. It's like, all right, how much?
Yeah, usually it's, hey, come down and take a look at it. It's always like, hey, here's what I found. You want to come take a look at it with me? We'll talk about it. Sometimes it's not. It's not going to be a happy.
And we've actually had some cases where people have come down and, the other shop, even with the DRP, and they go, ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, how'd this get past us?
So sorry. I had one time where we invited him to come down, and it turned out the shop was right. The repair was actually okay. It wasn't pretty.
Right.
I mean, I didn't like the paint work, but the repair was sound. And so at this point, it was like, it just needs to be repainted.
Yeah, it's just really cosmetic work.
So I need to have all my proof and everything together, because at this point, when I'm going over all this stuff and trying to play the next steps, I don't want to be looking and reaching and telling, oh, I think I'm going to go find this document or whatever. That also helps if Miss Smith tells Larry to call me, that when Larry calls me, I have all my stuff together. Sidebar on this. Don't just answer the phone. So I tell you this in the negotiation class, don't be readily available. That's a bad thing. So I don't give out the cell number on these situations. And when people call and say they want to talk about a claim, I want to make sure I'm ready. And sometimes that means we need to set an appointment. Leah, I would love to talk to you about this, Larry. Let's schedule an appointment so that I can make sure that I'm not going to be distracted and I have time. I literally had one recently, last summer, where the insurer told me we don't set inspections. I'm like, well, yeah, you do. You set inspections all the time to go look at, cars with customers. We don't set phone inspection times to talk to third parties. Okay.
All right.
We're like, so we're going to talk about this now? No.
Nope.
I want to make sure that I've got I don't have my information available. When you want to set an appointment, we'll talk. But I'm not going to shortchange the customer.
Yeah, no.
By speaking out of turn and not prepared. And I'm sure you don't want to shortchange it. You want to be prepared as well. So if you don't want to schedule an appointment, I'll be happy to say that you refused an appointment. I'm cool with that, right? But I'm not just going to let you catch me off guard. That was my favorite tool to do as an insurer, was to try to catch you off guard. I knew when payroll was due for you. I knew that a couple of days before payroll was a great time for me to call you, and you'd be eager to negotiate to get a check. And I knew that if I called you on Fridays, a lot of time you would be so eager to get me off the phone, I could get you to agree to things too. So now everybody's like, oh my God, we hate her. That's okay. I'm good with it. All right. The vehicle needs to be staged in a well-lit area and ready and available on a lift. Not for the third party, not for the other insurance company, not for the other body shop. I want to be able to walk the customer and show them what I found if I need to. So make sure that you have the vehicle ready for that. Is this going to settle, or is more going to be required? That's part of the conversation I have to have with the customer right away if we're going to need an expert.
Yeah.
And I'll explain that. And
the insurance company, the shop, the type of repair, be like, okay.
Yeah. Or I can explain to the customer, if we have to call in an expert because we have to prove these welds are bad, this is what I think it's going to cost. This is who my expert is. I'm usually lucky. But before COVID, you were down here about every other month, and so I could tell the local attorneys, hey, let's just schedule these for, May. Larry's going to be in town for a week.
And then they'd settle it before I got down here.
Right.
I carry all my stuff with me, bring it down here, my big yellow box of stuff, and I get down and be like, yeah, no, they settled.
Well,
what am I doing?
And I get a lot now that just settle off one phone call. They don't even want to come look at the car. They don't even want to write an estimate. They don't want any of that because I don't want to run the bill up. I don't want to charge you anything. But if you're easy to deal with and you are trustworthy and accountable, meaning you never bring a false fire, right? Then eventually this gets easier and it resolves with a lot of phone calls. If you are the one that's always false fires or you're naming people all over the place. These aren't easy to do. The phone call. So if I have to talk to the shop or the insurer, that's a very easy phone call. You leave the message and then you ask them to call when we can all have time to really talk through this, right? What I tell them is very basic. This is not a class on collision repair at this point. Here's the basic information. I have no mention of cost or anything to them at all. I am just assisting the customer, and the customer is giving me permission to tell you what I found in a more technical term. You don't mention a lawyer or expert. I love that. Well, you don't want the customer to have to hire a lawyer. Honestly, as an insurer, I absolutely did want them to hire a lawyer. So I was cool with that. And I was cool with me having to hire an attorney too. I had a lot of them on retainer. I need to get an agreement if they want an estimate for payment. So if they tell me that they want further teardown, or they tell me that they want me to write an estimate to tell them what it's going to cost to fix this or do it properly, when we talked about how we're not charging the customer, but I may charge a third party, sure, I'll be happy to do that. It's going to add to the cost. This is what I will be charging you for that.
Yeah, never write an estimate first and then try and call up. You don't take it as a re-repair and an extra job. And, if they say, hey, I want you to write an estimate on this. All right, send me an email that says you want to do this, and here's the fee schedule for me to write the estimate.
Right. Get those fees agreed to up front. And when I have that agreed to and I do a confirmation email on that, then my settlement and me getting paid is easier. All right, so what you need to know, don't think or assume anything.
No, you got to know it.
That means I have to go on the body shop's website and do some research. I love it when a shop is OE certified or is certified or trained or site. That gives me more. I need to know what I can prove and what I can't prove. I need to know if I can't prove it, can it be proved? Is there a third party that can prove that for me? I need to know those things. I have a lot of opinions and there's a lot of stuff I think, but that doesn't do me any good in the courtroom. And a lot of times the truth doesn't matter in court either. So one of the other things in the LMS is I have three training modules in the LMS on what's called business ethics. And sometimes what's ethical and what's truthful isn't legal or illegal. So just because a business doesn't necessarily tell the truth or doesn't do the truth or isn't ethical doesn't mean that it's a legal action. So sometimes we want things to be right, but that doesn't mean I can do anything about it, right? So I need to know that, what I can do under the law of that state. Because I'm more dealing with a repairer, the DOI is obsolete. I need to know what the consumer protection laws are for that state. I need to know what the consumer's options are. Not because I'm going to be their attorney, but then that tells me how far or what I want to get involved in. What laws or regulations are there? So I've had a few come through where I tell the customer, unless you hire an attorney, there's not much I can do for you. But if you want to file a complaint here or a complaint here, then if that makes you feel better, by all means do that. I know what I need to know what my facts are per the OEM. All right. Sometimes, so when I'm negotiating with a third party, the OE websites and the OE information is sometimes foreign, but there's usually some great material from iCar that's available that I can bring in and go, hey, I can understand why this isn't a trusted source for you, and I can understand why this, but this is a nice neutral ground that both of us can understand and can believe in. So
SC study guides, like in their explanation of how they derive their questions, the same things that iCar would have or anything like that. One of the bigger issues I've found is you don't give a repair bill, okay? And the insurance company's estimate is the only one that's around, and there's frame time on there. And you didn't find that it was needed for frame time. Now you're in court trying to prove why there's no frame time. Well, it didn't need frame time. I measured it, but okay, but where's your proof? So you need to know and be able to prove these things. And that comes up a lot because people throw frame time on a repair a lot of times, and that exasperates, the repair process or anything. But that also puts a car that had structural damage when it really didn't, and you need to prove it didn't have structural damage. The insurance company writes whatever the hell they're going to write. This is my repair bill, and there's no evidence of me clamping the car down. I put it on a two-post lift and measured it. Right. So, this is why you need to know these things and be able to show the repair options and what you did on your end of it. So it's so important to write a final bill, not use the insurance companies.
Right.
Because if you wind up in court, all this is going to become a problem, and you're going to look bad. You know, oh, well, you know, the insurance company threw 2 hours on frame repair to make up some labor rate differences to try and help me out. Yeah, we know that goes on in the industry, cost shifting. Guess what? What's not known? It can't be proven in a court of law. It's an opinion. You'd have to call in 70 shops, 80 shops to say that.
Well, it's bottom line, it's fraud.
Yeah, it's fraud.
It's fraud.
It's unethical and it's fraud in many states.
Because
and
you charge the customer that. So even though the insurer writes an indemnification estimate, not a repair estimate. And if you don't believe that, even Nationwide put it in their own words and wrote it to Repair Driven News in 2016. So you can just go to Repair Driven News and see it in their own words. We write indemnification estimates. We don't fix cars. So you definitely don't want to use the insurer's estimate whatsoever. And again, what I have to pay or should pay as an insurer has absolutely nothing to do with how you as a shop fix the car. And until this industry gets that, we're still going to be doing PRIs and we're still going to have problems. But you need to know material science and substrates. So if we're going to have conversations, a lot of times when the other party, so let's say it's the shop's insurance company under the garage keepers, hires that 30-year-old IA, and he wanders in here, and I obviously don't know what I'm talking about, little lady. That was the last one, little lady.
Little lady.
He walked out without a few teeth. but that's okay, and let's talk about some things and go through some things. But you need to know what you're talking about. Never
be very
assume
careful on
anything.
what you call structural. I mean, I had a guy one time tell me in a court case, oh yeah, the bed on a pickup truck is a structural component. Okay, let's go with this. We'll have fun in court with this one.
Never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. All right, never ever let the word industry standard come out of your mouth.
Oh, that's come up numerous times by people, industry standard. And then I have my attorneys that I work with say to them, I need you to produce the industry standard book. And then you get into court and they couldn't produce it. It's like, well, you keep mentioning this industry standard, and the judge will toss it.
Industry
no
standard, reasonable and customary, those things don't need to come
the
out.
industry standard from Nissan on this car, the Sentra, is different than the Maxima, which is different than the Tundra, which is different than a Camry, which is different than, and they're all relatively the same type of cars.
I fight it because sometimes I think something should be so, like clipping a car, right? We should all know that we shouldn't clip a car.
And there's websites on Facebook, groups that show this.
But sometimes I fight myself from saying, I want to say, this is just known, this is just basic industry standard information.
But the guy's a sculptor. It's a death trap, though. I'm not saying the guy's doing, that he doesn't know what he's doing as far as sculpting this thing. The problem is that it's not a safe vehicle. If you're going to use it as a trophy thing and tow it all over the place to show your artwork and what you can do, that's great. Don't drive it.
Right. All right, so when do you need to call in an expert? So you can do these. Like I said, I like to do them. One, not because I'm trying to, it's not a revenue stream, it's nothing. I just like to have the evidence to be able to say when someone says industry standard or this is how vehicles are repaired in the market, I can go, well, yeah, I agree with you. And that's why I don't want to do that. I want to agree that there's a market standard in my area, and I want to have the proof to show why that market standard is the wrong standard. So when I get an expert, when it's got to go to court, you don't want to be a body shop in court trying to be an expert. And I get it. You do know more than the average bear, right?
Yes.
It's you don't want to go there. It doesn't end up very well.
If there's a couple of guys on the Facebook site now that are commenting and stuff, you don't have to say it was you, but say, hey, look, you're right. Body shop guys usually make horrible witnesses, make horrible experts unless they've been trained in the area on how to be an expert, because they give too many opinions that can't be proven. And if you get an attorney that knows what they're talking about in court, I've seen poor shop guys that were doing the right thing, trying to say it the right way, and just gave their opinion, and they got destroyed. And they call me up afterwards like, oh, you were so right about that. It's like, and I'm not making fun of shops. It's just, you have to be trained on how to, how to testify. And sometimes the lawyer doesn't know how to prep you for it. And you go into court thinking you got this great case because he listened to you, and it becomes a nightmare.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting is yesterday, so we didn't see you a lot yesterday on the World Fair because you were deposition.
Yes, because of the COVID stuff. This case has been put off 4 or 5 times.
Right. But what was interesting to me, and still is Larry, you're in court all the time. You still did deposition prep before the dep.
Yeah.
So dep prep is tough, and court prep is tough. I've been doing it for a long time. I still make mistakes. I still go in there and go, God, I screwed up.
One of my favorite questions in depositions, and this is very true. It's like, well, how can you say this damage to the front of the bumper occurred during the vehicle owner's ownership of the vehicle? Well, because the guy who you had do the owner of the vehicle did the inspection. In his photos, it's not there 3 months after he bought the car, and a year later when I looked at the car, the damage is there. So did someone borrow his car? It was during, I said, he didn't do it. I said during his possession of the vehicle, that damage to the left front happened. And the lawyer looked at it like, you asked a question you didn't know the answer to.
Yeah.
Good move. We're going down my report, but now you put yourself in a bad predicament because your guy induced damages to his own vehicle and now trying to claim this, or this. So guess what? You made a mistake.
Right. I love those when they do that. And there's a lot of times I'm going to need an expert. There's sometimes that cars come through here that I know I'm not qualified to look at, and you need an expert, right?
Yeah.
So I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. So. If you have any questions, just throw it up there. That's the last, you can reach out to Larry, you can reach out to me. Don't be surprised if you reach out to Larry. You may get yelled at, right? But sometimes that's tough love, and it's good, and you learn a lot of lessons. And if you can get past the yelling, you're going to learn some things. But there's a lot of good reasons to do post-repair inspection. I do believe now, and I get why a lot of you don't want to do them. You don't want to, you don't want to criticize your peers. At any given moment, any of us can look at a car and go, yeah, that could be one of mine too. Something could have got out of the back of my shop, and it is. But we are being judged by the other shops in our market, and the consumer judges us by that as well. And so if I can't show the difference between me and another shop down the road, then it's going to be really hard to get paid to fix cars right. And so it's going to be critical, especially after what State Farm announced last week at a panel discussion about how they're going to start advertising OE certifications on their DRP shops. That's cool, but now I'm going to have to show why I'm different.
Yep.
Because the assumption is going to be, well, they're certified. They're this, they're that.
That's going to cause a lot of issues, I think.
Yeah. And PRIs are really my only way when I go to court. And we've all had it, they walk into court and bring another shop in town that stands there on the defense side and says, none of this has to be done. This shop's just running up the bill. They told the customer a lie. How the difference is between us two, because I'm standing there as a shop too. And just because I can talk real good.
It doesn't
mean anything. All right, we are back at noon.
Yes.
Cam Otto is going to come in here. We're going to do some glue pull repair and talk about some new tools and some new equipment that's out on the market in glue pull, and answer some of your questions that you may have at that. And then 2 o'clock we are back, and we are beaming in from good old Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. Sean Collins, Ryan Merriman for 3M are going to beam in and join us, and we're going to talk about what does the OE require when it comes to materials on vehicles.
Yes.
So that ought to be a good discussion. Anytime we got Ryan and Sean,
it's going to be fun.
Beaming in, we have a good time. If only Doug would have been here. Doug, if you're still watching.
Doug, what are you doing, Doug? Where are you?
He couldn't get permission to travel. And I totally get that. That's why BASF
I had the permission slip for him. I had it all
You had
signed
one?
and everything.
Yeah.
My mom says I